My neighbor was always kind until I declined to sign a petition against a new family on the street. Suddenly, my trash was searched, my photos leaked, and anonymous notes appeared in my mailbox. I asked her, "Why are you doing this?" She smiled. "Because silence is betrayal, and you betrayed us." But when I found her diary in a dumpster, the names inside were, "I live in Brighton, Michigan." Not the flashy part near the lakes, but the older, quieter side. I moved here after my divorce 6 years ago. I needed somewhere cheap and low maintenance, where people didn't ask too many questions. Brighton seemed perfect. A little sleepy, mostly older folks, and neighbors who waved and minded their business. Or so I thought. The woman who lived next door, Sharon Whitmer, was one of the first to greet me when I moved in. She brought over a pan of lasagna and a potted plant. She talked about how her husband passed away a few years back and how she loved taking care of her roses. At first, I thought she was just a little overly polite. The kind who remembers your birthday even if you never told her. We didn't become close, but I always nodded when I saw her. Sometimes she'd bring me cookies or holiday cards. Always signed, "With love, Sharon." I didn't think much of it. I'm a private person. I work from home. I keep to myself. I thought she respected that. Then came the Carters. Andre and Maya Carter moved into the last house on our street. They had 2 little girls, one was maybe 5, the other still in diapers. I saw them unloading their U-Haul one Saturday morning, and I walked over to say hi. They were friendly, polite, young. New to Michigan. Just looking for a good place to raise their kids. The day after they moved in, Sharon knocked on my door. She had a clipboard in her hand and a tight look on her face. She told me she was gathering signatures to file a complaint with the neighborhood board. I reminded her we didn't actually have an HOA. She smiled like I was a child and said, "We don't, but we still care about standards." I asked what kind of complaint. She said the new family had too many cars, that they parked on the street, and that she heard music at night. That didn't sit right with me. I hadn't heard anything. And the street wasn't exactly crowded. We all parked wherever we wanted. Then she said something that stayed with me. She said, "They're just not the right fit for this block." I paused. "What do you mean by that?" She blinked slowly and said, "You know what I mean." I told her no, I didn't, and that I wouldn't sign anything. Her jaw clenched just slightly. She said, "I see," then walked away. That was the last normal day I had for a while. The first thing that happened was small. My trash can was tipped over one morning. I figured raccoons. Then, 2 days later, I noticed something strange. A few envelopes, ones I had torn up with personal info, were laid out neatly next to my bin. As if someone had gone through the bag and pulled them out. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Then, one night around midnight, I looked outside and saw a figure crouched by my trash. I flipped on the porch light and they bolted. I couldn't see their face, but they were fast. Real fast. I filed a police report. They told me unless I had video or a license plate, there wasn't much they could do. So I installed cameras. Front and back. The footage showed nothing. But weird things kept happening. A Facebook account popped up with my name and face. It had pictures I hadn't posted anywhere. One of me in a swimsuit from years ago. Another of me brushing my teeth, inside my house. That one sent me into a panic. I tore through every room looking for hidden cameras. I found nothing. Then the notes started. The first one was in my mailbox. No stamp, no name. Just written on a small yellow post-it. "You chose them over us." I crumpled it up and tossed it. The next one said, "You will regret betraying your neighbors." I started locking everything, windows, doors, even cabinets. I barely slept. I tried to act normal, but every time I saw Sharon pruning her hedges with those red gloves, smiling like nothing had changed, I felt sick. I confronted her one afternoon. I walked right over and asked, "Are you doing this?" She looked up, tilted her head, and asked, "Doing what, dear?" I said, "The photos. The notes. Someone's messing with me." She just stared at me. Then she gave me this slow, knowing smile. Like she'd been waiting for me to ask. And she said, "Because silence is betrayal. And you betrayed us." Then she turned back to her garden. I stood there for a minute, stunned. Then I walked away. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't prove it was her. But my gut told me it was. A few days later, I visited the Carters. I knocked on their door and asked if they'd been having any issues. Maya looked like she hadn't slept in days. She told me someone called CPS on them. Said Andre had hit one of the kids. CPS came out, inspected the house, found nothing. Case closed. But it scared them. Andre said their tires had been slashed once, and they got a letter saying, "You should have stayed where you came from." We talked for hours. Shared everything. It was clear now, Sharon, or someone working with her, had been targeting us. I told them I'd figure something out. And then something strange happened. The garbage collectors didn't come that week. I don't know why. Everyone had their trash bins out for 2 extra days. On the second night, I took a walk around midnight, trying to clear my head. That's when I saw it. A green notebook, sticking halfway out of a black garbage bag in front of Sharon's house. The binding looked familiar. She always carried little journals. I don't know what came over me. I looked around, made sure no one was watching, and pulled it out. Shoved it in my hoodie and walked home. Inside, I opened it. The first few pages were normal. Lists, shopping reminders, Bible verses. But around halfway through, it changed. There were names. Paragraphs. Descriptions of people on our block. She called them tainted, unworthy, and dangerous to the neighborhood's spirit. She wrote about the Carters. About how their children would grow up to spread corruption if left unchecked. She said Andre was aggressive and dishonest. Maya was seductive and untrustworthy. Then I saw 3 other names, people I barely remembered. One was a teenage girl who moved out 2 years ago. Sharon wrote that she wore provocative clothes and tempted the sons of the Lord. Another was a man named Mr. Feldman. She called him godless and full of greed. He sold his house and left in 2021. I remember he was quiet, always friendly. The last name written? Mine. She pretends to be kind. Pretends to be neutral. But neutrality is cowardice. She betrayed us by refusing to take a stand. She let them in. She welcomed them. She is worse than the enemy. I froze. I took pictures of every page. Then I called the police. They took the notebook. Said it was potential evidence. But they couldn't arrest her. Not yet. Not unless something connected it directly to the harassment. So I made copies. Kept them hidden. Just in case. I also started watching her. Following her movements. Seeing who came to her house. I began noticing patterns. And now I know something bigger is going on. This isn't just about the Carters. This is about something Sharon has been doing for years. And it's about to get ugly. After I handed over the diary, things got quiet. Too quiet. No more notes. No more Facebook photos. It was like someone hit pause. But I didn't trust it. I started digging deeper. I remembered a name from the diary, Mr. Feldman. He moved out a few years ago. I looked him up, found an old phone number, and left a message. I didn't expect a call back. He called the next morning. He told me his story. Said Sharon made his life hell after he turned down an invitation to join her street prayer circle. She wanted him to donate money, attend weekly meetings at her house, and sign something called a covenant of values. He refused. A week later, his mail started going missing. Then someone keyed his car. One night, He came home and found dead squirrels nailed to his garage door. Police called it a prank. He moved out 2 months later. He thought it was over. But hearing my voice brought it all back. "She's still doing it?" he asked. "After all these years?" I told him yes. He gave me names, other people she tried to recruit before they left town. That's when it hit me, this wasn't about race, or just the Carters. Sharon had a pattern. She picked people who didn't follow her lead. People who said no. And when they did, she punished them. Quietly. Systematically. I told Andre and Maya everything. We met in my garage late one night, kept the lights off, phones inside. It felt ridiculous, like a movie, but we weren't taking chances anymore. We made a plan. Andre had a cousin who worked in cybersecurity. He set up a decoy email account and linked it to the fake Facebook profile that had posted those photos of me. Within 48 hours, the IP address pinged, right back to Sharon's house. That was something solid. We sent it to the detective working our case. He was stunned. Said it could be enough to get a warrant. But there was more. The Carters had a doorbell cam. It had been offline for weeks, but Andre reset it. We pulled the footage. Most nights were quiet. But one clip, dated a week before, showed a shadowy figure sliding something into their mailbox around 2:43 a.m. Same build as Sharon. Same posture. Red gardening gloves. Still no face. We needed something stronger. So I went back to the diary. I had scanned every page and read them twice. But something kept bugging me. There were numbers scribbled in the margins. 7 digits. Sometimes 10. They didn't look random. I ran a reverse lookup online. They were phone numbers. Half of them were disconnected. But 3 were still active. One belonged to someone named Rebecca Cross. I called it. A woman picked up. Sounded tired, nervous. I told her who I was, that I found her number in a diary. Silence on the line. Then she asked one question. "Is it Sharon?" I said yes. She sighed. Told me she used to live in Brighton. Moved out 4 years ago. Said Sharon ran something like a neighborhood purity group. Not official. Just quiet meetings, mostly women, mostly religious, who believed in moral preservation. At first it was potlucks, Bible study, prayer sessions. Then it got weirder. Sharon asked them to write spiritual profiles on people in the neighborhood. Rank their behaviors. Say who they thought was dangerous to the block's values. Rebecca said she left after she realized Sharon was using those profiles to plan harassment. She called it soft cleansing, Rebecca said. I asked her to go on record. She agreed. I took all of this, IP evidence, testimonies, diary scans, and sent it to a lawyer a friend recommended. He said it might be enough to launch a civil suit, even if charges didn't stick. But the moment things started moving, Sharon struck again. This time, it was worse. Andre was pulled over leaving work. Cops said he matched a description for a robbery 2 towns over. The description? A 6-foot black male in a hoodie. That was it. He was handcuffed in front of his kids. He sat in a cruiser for 3 hours before they let him go. No apology. Someone had made an anonymous tip. And then Maya got an email from her own boss. Someone had sent her company a photo of her at a college party from 10 years ago. Beer in hand, middle finger up. The sender claimed she was unstable. Unfit to represent the company. We all knew who did it. But there was more. One of the people I called, a woman named Elise, agreed to meet me at a cafe in town. She showed up late, shaking. Said she found something she thought I should see. A flyer. Old, torn, but intact. She found it tucked into an old Bible she kept from Sharon's group. The flyer was for a neighborhood purity retreat, hosted by the Whitmer Fellowship Circle. I googled it. Nothing. But then I cross-referenced it with old newspaper archives. There it was. A small article from 1998. Local cult investigated in Tennessee. It listed names. Sharon Whitmer. Her husband, a man named Kenneth. And 3 other families. Accused of stalking, harassment, and targeted psychological tactics against neighbors who rejected their teachings. No one was convicted. Charges were dropped due to lack of physical evidence. They moved north. To Brighton. My stomach turned. It was all real. And Sharon had been building this thing for decades. Quietly. Patiently. I had no idea what I was up against. But I wasn't backing down. Because now I had something I never had before. People. And we were ready. A week after learning about the Whitmer Fellowship Circle, everything changed. Someone broke into my garage. Nothing was taken. Nothing was damaged. But one thing was left behind, a photo. It was a printout, black and white, grainy. It showed me sitting at the cafe with Elise. We were talking, leaning in. It was taken from a distance through a window. On the back, scribbled in thick black marker. "You're being watched too." I called the police. Again. The officer came out, wrote a report, but said unless I had cameras on the inside of the garage, there wasn't much they could do. My hands were shaking. I knew they were trying to scare me. It was working. But I wasn't stopping. The Carters and I went over everything we had. We had testimonies. We had evidence linking Sharon's IP address to the fake Facebook account. We had the diary. We even had the flyer. But no one in town wanted to touch it. No lawyer local would take the case. One told me off the record. "That woman has deep roots here. Real quiet influence. You'll stir a hornet's nest." We needed someone from the outside. Maya reached out to a nonprofit she'd worked with in college. They help victims of organized harassment and hate crimes. After 2 phone calls, they agreed to help. They had a legal team, an investigator, and they were interested. That's when we went public. The nonprofit wrote an article. Posted it online. No names were mentioned, but they described the situation: a neighborhood in Michigan, an organized harassment ring, a woman connected to a religious cult in the late 90s. Within 3 days, it went viral. Then the media showed up. Local reporters started knocking. I didn't speak to them, but someone else did. Rebecca Cross. She agreed to an interview. She named Sharon. She told her story. The paper ran it under the headline: "Brighton woman accused of leading neighborhood harassment ring." Links to disbanded Tennessee cult found. After that, it exploded. Sharon stopped smiling. She stopped trimming her hedges. The red gloves didn't come out. Her porch lights stayed off. But her people, they didn't go quiet. The backlash was immediate. Someone slashed Maya's tires. Again. A brick was thrown through Andre's back window. No note this time. Just silence. I started finding religious pamphlets taped to my door. "Judgment comes to those who lie," one said. The Carters installed extra cameras. So did I. That's when we caught him. On a Thursday night at 2:11 a.m., my motion lights flicked on. A man in a dark hoodie walked up to my porch, looked directly at the camera, and taped a small white envelope to my front door. He turned and walked away, no rush. I watched the clip, paused it, and zoomed in. I didn't know him, but I'd seen him before. At Sharon's house. Mowing her lawn last summer. We turned the footage over to the nonprofit's lawyer. They sent it to the police. The next day, that man was arrested. Inside the envelope was a flash drive. I almost didn't plug it in. But I did. There were folders. Dozens. Each named after someone on our block. One was mine. Inside, photos, addresses, schedules, notes on when I left my house, who visited, license plates of guests. Even sound recordings. I felt cold. The Carters had one too. So did 3 other neighbors. Whoever was helping Sharon had been watching us all for years. But that wasn't the worst part. Inside one folder labeled Fellowship Roster, there was a list. 20 names. Not all from our street. Some from nearby blocks. Some from other towns. One from as far away as Indiana. They were all part of her circle. And they weren't all women. Sharon's group wasn't just a social nuisance. It was organized. Quiet. Spread out. And then I saw it, something buried deep in the folders. A scanned letter dated 2 years ago. It was from Sharon to a man named Thomas R. Kent. The letter talked about expanding their efforts to enforce spiritual alignment and a strategy to remove dissenters from the community, one household at a time. There were coded phrases. Words like cleansing, reconstruction, and neutralization. This wasn't about moral judgment anymore. It was about control. Complete, quiet control over an entire neighborhood. Possibly more. I sat in my kitchen that night shaking. I finally understood why people moved out without warning. Why some neighbors disappeared. Why complaints never went anywhere. Because it wasn't just Sharon. It was a system. A network. And now they knew I'd found it. But here's the thing, they underestimated me. They thought I'd be scared. That I'd pack up and leave like the others. But I wasn't going anywhere. Once I saw that flash drive, I knew there was no turning back. They weren't just spying. They were planning. Coordinated. It had been going on for years. Sharon was just the face of it. But the roots? They ran deep. Right through the neighborhood, through old churches, city committees, even some businesses. I didn't sleep that night. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. The next morning, I met with the nonprofit's legal team in person. We gave them everything: diary copies, scanned letters, the flash drive, video footage, statements from former neighbors like Rebecca and Mr. Feldman. The lawyers said we had enough to take action on multiple levels. Civil suits, restraining orders, maybe even federal involvement due to the surveillance and hate group ties. 2 weeks later, the first lawsuit was filed. Sharon Whitmer was named directly. So were 5 others from her circle. The Carters filed theirs too, for harassment, emotional distress, and defamation. I followed with my own, plus an additional charge for stalking due to the photos and videos taken inside my home. And the nonprofit filed a separate report with the FBI, handing over everything we had gathered, especially the folders from the flash drive. And then? Everything unraveled. Sharon was served her lawsuit in front of her house. She opened the door in her robe, holding a Bible. A process server handed her the thick envelope and said, "You've been named in a civil harassment case. You need to appear in court." The next day, she left town. Just disappeared. Her house sat dark. Mail piled up. Nobody saw her for weeks. Then one of her allies, one of the men on the fellowship roster, got arrested for an unrelated charge: trespassing. But when they searched his home, they found binders filled with information on other people in town. Journals. Maps. Schedules. That was the final push. The FBI got involved. What they found broke the story wide open. The Whitmer Fellowship had been operating like a low-level domestic cult. No branding, no church building, but a strong network. Dozens of families across Michigan and nearby states. They targeted moral threats, people who didn't fit their outdated standards. Single moms, interracial families, LGBTQ couples, atheists, anyone who questioned their authority. They used surveillance, smear campaigns, anonymous tips, and fear to push people out. In total, they had driven at least 32 families out of their neighborhoods. Sharon's house was raided. They found 3 hard drives, 1 old laptop, and a locked cabinet filled with files. Notes on people's routines. Photos taken over fences. Secret audio recordings. She was arrested in a Walmart parking lot in Ohio. Trying to leave the state with 2 suitcases and a suitcase full of burner phones and cash. When the story hit the news, it exploded. CNN? NBC. Podcasts. Reddit threads. The cult next door was trending for days. And I didn't hide. I gave my name. So did the Carters. We spoke out. Gave interviews. Told everything. The hate. The fear. The silence. And how one woman, me, saying no to a petition was all it took to break it open. Sharon and her core group were indicted on charges including harassment, stalking, cybercrime, illegal surveillance, and conspiracy. 2 members of her circle turned on her in exchange for reduced sentences. They testified that she'd been grooming people for years, teaching them how to break unwanted neighbors quietly. Not through violence, but through fear, shame, and isolation. The judge called it one of the most disturbing cases of civilian psychological abuse he'd ever seen. Sharon was sentenced to 24 years without parole. She wept in court, holding a Bible, still calling it God's work. But here's the best part. Her house? It was auctioned off by the state. Guess who bought it? The Carters. They got it cheap, state seized property, no bidding war. They moved in 2 months later. Their girls now run through Sharon's old garden, laughing, tearing out her roses and planting sunflowers. As for me, I stayed in my house. I fixed my fence. Got new cameras. Started walking again, not just at night, but during the day too. No more hiding. Some people in the neighborhood looked away when they saw me after the news broke. Some were ashamed they hadn't spoken up. Some were angry I stirred the pot. But one woman, an older lady who lived 2 doors down, walked up to me and said, "I always thought something was off about her." "Thank you." And you know what? That was enough. Because I used to think silence was safer. But now I know, silence is how monsters grow. And I won't be silent again.